The exact year isn't known, but it's estimated that approximately 3100 BC, King Nama, also called Menes, successfully unified Upper and Lower Egypt. He is credited with establishing the first ruling dynasty in Egyptian history, thereby marking the beginning of the Old Kingdom period. Menes is celebrated for his significant contributions to the unification of Egypt, laying the foundation for the country's early civilization. The capital was established in Memphis, and under the rule of dynasties, Egypt flourished with cultural, economic, and architectural advancements. Hieroglyphic writing emerged during this period, and the kings of the first dynasty kept records of their activities on the walls of their tombs, providing valuable insights into their lives and achievements. The most renowned First Dynasty kings include Aha, who expanded Egypt's borders and established new settlements, and Jer, considered the founder of the Egyptian state. He introduced a centralized system of government, standardized weights and measures, and implemented religious reforms. The Second Dynasty followed, with kings like Itjotas, known for his successful campaigns in Nubia and the Sinai Peninsula. The Third Dynasty began with King Djoser, whose reign marked a significant turning point in Egyptian history. Djoser's vizier, the architect Imhotep, designed and built the first step pyramid at Saqqara, the world's first large stone structure. This architectural marvel demonstrated the growing power and organization of the Egyptian state. Subsequent kings of the Third Dynasty included Sekhemkhet, who continued construction projects initiated by Djoser and built a temple complex in his honor. The Fourth Dynasty is widely regarded as the golden age of pyramid building in Egypt. It commenced with King Sneferu, who constructed 3 pyramids at Dashur, including the Bent Pyramid and the Red Pyramid. His successor, Khufu, king of the Fourth Dynasty, is credited with building the Great Pyramid of Giza, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Khufu's son, Khafre, built his pyramid next to the Sphinx, while his grandson, Menkaure, constructed the smallest of the 3 pyramids at Giza. The Fourth Dynasty witnessed significant advancements in engineering and administrative organization, with the state reaching the zenith of its power. However, toward the end of this era, the king's authority gradually waned, and influence started to shift to provincial governors and temple priests. The Fifth Dynasty saw kings such as Userkaf, who expanded Egypt's borders and built a temple at Abu Sir. Sahur, renowned for his military campaigns in Nubia and Libya, and Neferikare Kakai, known for his administrative reforms and construction projects. During the Fifth Dynasty, the worship of Ra, the sun god, gained prominence, and sun temples started appearing in Abu Sir. Pyramid texts, religious texts intended to guide the king through the afterlife, began being inscribed in some royal tombs. The Sixth Dynasty commenced with King Teti, who faced internal strife and was perhaps assassinated in a conspiracy. His successor, Userkare, was followed by Pipi I, a prominent king of the dynasty. Pipi I led military campaigns in the south against Nubia and in the east against Bedouins. He also built temples and established trade relations with the land of Punt. After Pipi I, his son Meron-Re ascended to the throne, followed by Pipi II, who had an exceptionally long reign, possibly over 90 years, making it one of the longest in history. However, during his reign, the state's gradual decline continued. Regional governors gained more power and signs of division and collapse became evident, bringing an end to the Old Kingdom and ushering in the First Intermediate Period. At the start of the First Intermediate Period, after the end of the Sixth Dynasty, Egypt entered a time of weakness and decline. The weakening of central authority was one of the main reasons for this downturn, as power gradually shifted to provincial rulers who enjoyed more autonomy. Foreign tribes such as Bedouins began attacking Egypt from the east. As the state's ability to defend its borders diminished, these tribes exerted greater influence over Egyptian life. After the death of the last king of the 12th dynasty, Egypt plunged into darkness, descending into chaos and civil war. The country was divided into three parts: Upper, Lower, and Central Egypt. Each part was ruled by a different local governor who was virtually independent of the others. And so, the Egyptians found themselves living under three different kings at once. This situation lasted for almost 2 centuries, until King Mentuhotep II of Upper Egypt managed to conquer the south and unite the country again. This victory marked the beginning of the 11th dynasty and the start of a new era known as the Middle Kingdom in Egyptian history. And so the Egyptians began to restore their strength after a long period of turmoil and weakness. The reign of King Mentuhotep II, who founded the 11th dynasty, coincided with the beginning of the Middle Kingdom in Egypt, which lasted for about 4 centuries, specifically from 2055 to 1650 BC. This era marked the start of a phase of relative political and economic stability and prosperity compared to what Egypt had gone through during the preceding periods. And so, with the establishment of the 11th dynasty, Egypt began to get out of the crisis that had been afflicting it since the end of the Old Kingdom. King Mentuhotep II is considered one of the most prominent kings of this era due to his military strength and political wisdom. Through his strength, he managed to put an end to the era of civil war and discord in Egypt and bring back stability to the country after a long period of disorder. While his political wisdom enabled him to maintain peace and security throughout Egypt, thanks to his efforts, Egypt began to restore its former strength and glory after a long period of decline and weakness. In fact, some historians believe that King Mentuhotep II was able to restore the power and stability of the Egyptian state more effectively than any other ruler before him. Thanks to his victories, Egypt was able to expand again and become one of the most powerful countries in the region. During the Middle Kingdom, Egypt regained much of its former strength and prosperity, thanks to the construction of magnificent temples, pyramids, and other architectural masterpieces. The economy flourished and trade expanded to distant lands. The arts and literature also witnessed significant development. In addition to that, the Egyptians made great scientific and technological progress during the Middle Ages. They made significant advances in medicine, astronomy, and mathematics. They invented many tools and devices that greatly facilitated their daily lives. King Amenemhat I, who succeeded Mentuhotep II, worked to further strengthen central authority in Egypt. He also built a series of fortresses along Egypt's borders to protect the country from external threats. At the same time, he paid great attention to developing trade relations with Egypt's neighbors, especially in the Levant and Nubia. His successor, King Senusret I, continued the policy of strengthening Egypt's authority over Nubia and was able to expand Egypt's influence into new areas. During his reign, Egypt reached the height of its power and prosperity. King Senusret III, who came to power after Senusret I, continued to pursue the same policies that had brought Egypt to its peak of power. He waged major military campaigns against the Bedouin tribes in the Eastern Delta and Nubian regions, and he was able to successfully defeat these tribes and bring them under the rule of Egypt. In addition, King Senusret III developed the city of Pelusium on Egypt's eastern frontier, which quickly became a key communication hub with Asia. Thanks to the efforts of the rulers of the 12th dynasty, Egypt was able to restore its position as a major power in the Middle East and North Africa. However, with the beginning of the 13th dynasty, Egypt entered a period of decline. The ruling class began facing external threats, especially from surrounding peoples. Desert tribes like the Hyksos began attacking Egypt in the northeast, taking advantage of the weakness of the Egyptian army and the disunity among the rulers. These repeated attacks gradually weakened the state and made it difficult to defend itself against foreign invaders. And thus, the Hyksos were able to take advantage of the situation and enter Egypt and establish their rule in the eastern Nile Delta, while the Egyptian pharaohs retreated to Thebes. This marked the beginning of the Hyksos era in Egypt and the start of the 15th dynasty, which lasted for about a century. During this period, Egypt was divided politically into several regions, each ruled by a different foreign king. The Egyptian people suffered greatly during this era due to the instability and insecurity that prevailed throughout the country. However, at the end of the 15th dynasty, King Ahmose was able to expel the Hyksos from Egypt and reunite the country again. This victory marked the beginning of the 18th dynasty and the start of the New Kingdom in Egypt, which lasted for about 2 centuries. During the New Kingdom, the Egyptian pharaohs reasserted their power over the entire country and began to build massive temples and pyramids that were symbols of their strength and wealth. Egypt's history was full of ups and downs. But during the New Kingdom, things really took off. It all started when King Thutmose III came to power. He's considered one of the greatest military pharaohs ever, and when I say he was a badass, I mean it. Thutmose III expanded the Egyptian empire to places like the Levant, Mesopotamia, and Palestine, making Egypt a global superpower in the ancient world. Just imagine ancient Egypt flexing its muscles all over the place. It's mind-blowing. He also made strong alliances with neighboring countries, showing them who was boss. Thutmose III wasn't just a military genius. He was also a master of politics and diplomacy. He knew how to play the game and keep his rivals in check. Through clever moves and strategic thinking, he kept Egypt on top. Thutmose III continued to make Egypt stronger and more powerful through many successful military campaigns. He went head-to-head with the Hittites and Canaanites, giving ancient Egypt control over huge parts of Asia Minor, the Levant, and Palestine. It was like an ancient Egyptian empire stretching from one end of the ancient world to the other. He even built up Egypt's navy to take on the Mediterranean countries, expanding trade and cultural interaction. Talk about a true badass pharaoh. But wait, there's more. After Thutmose III came Queen Hatshepsut, one of the most famous rulers of this era. She became famous for her massive architectural projects, including the magnificent Deir el-Bahari Temple in Luxor. Hatshepsut was known for her great political wisdom and managed to rule Egypt for a long time, despite being a woman in a male-dominated society. Hatshepsut also expanded Egypt's trade relations with many countries, including the mysterious land of Punt, from which ships returned loaded with rare resources. She brought wealth and prosperity to Egypt through her smart trading skills. Hatshepsut's reign was a golden age for Egypt, and she's still remembered as one of the greatest pharaohs of all time. Next up is King Amenhotep III, who took the throne when Egypt was at the peak of its prosperity during the New Kingdom. Amenhotep III was known for his peaceful policies and his love for the arts and architecture. He built many magnificent temples and structures, including the Karnak temples and the colossal statues known as the Colossi of Memnon. These statues are still standing tall today, thousands of years later. Amenhotep III developed friendly relations with the major empires of the time, such as the Hittite and Assyrian empires. He was a true champion of peace and diplomacy. His reign was a time of great cultural exchange and artistic achievement. It was like the ancient Egyptian Renaissance. But then came King Amenhotep IV, who later changed his name to Akhenaten. Akhenaten was a controversial figure who introduced a radical religious reform that changed the course of Egyptian history. He turned the traditional Egyptian religion upside down by introducing the worship of one god, Aten, the sun god. Akhenaten's religious revolution stirred a lot of controversy and resistance in traditional Egyptian society. He moved the capital to Amarna and reorganized the state's administration, weakening the authority of the traditional Amun priesthood and creating many political enemies within the palace walls. Akhenaten's religious reforms were so radical that they caused major shifts in the state's politics and social system. It was like a total upheaval of the old ways. After Akhenaten's death, Egypt's religious and political balance was restored during the reign of King Tutankhamun, who took the throne at a young age and ruled for around 10 years. Despite his short reign, Tutankhamun is one of the most famous pharaohs in history because of the discovery of his tomb in the Valley of the Kings. The discovery of his treasures in the 20th century made headlines around the world and brought him fame. Tutankhamun might have ruled for a short time, but his legacy lives on through his spectacular tomb. And let's not forget King Ramses II, perhaps the most legendary pharaoh of them all. He ruled for a whopping 66 years, around 1279 to 1213 BCE, and was a military superstar. Ramses II led countless military campaigns and is said to have fought in over 70 battles. He was a true warrior king. One of his most famous battles was the Battle of Kadesh against the Hittites, where he faced off against the Hittite king Muwatalli II. The battle was epic and resulted in a peace treaty between the two sides. It was actually the first known peace treaty in history. Ramses II's military prowess and diplomatic skills earned him the title of the Great Peacemaker. The reign of Ramses III marked the end of an era, the end of the magnificent new kingdom of Egypt. This era was not only a golden age for the kingdom, but also for ancient Egyptian art and culture. But like the setting sun, Egypt's influence in the region began to wane with time. The empire was now ready to enter a long and slow decline. Although Ramses III successfully defended his kingdom against invaders like the mysterious Sea Peoples, he could not prevent Egypt from getting weakened. These attacks had taken a heavy toll on the country, and the Egyptian military was far from its former glory. It would never again enjoy the same level of strength and power it once did. After Ramses III's death in 1157 BCE, a civil war broke out in the kingdom. The pharaoh's wife and the actual power holder Tiye was trying to secure the throne for her son, while the crown prince and Ramses's heir, Amun-Herkhotshef, was away campaigning in Syria. Ultimately, Amun won the war and took the throne as Amun-Herkhotshef I. This civil war proved to be a costly one and greatly weakened the already fragile kingdom. During his reign, Egypt started to pull back from its farthest reaches. The borders started to shrink, and the Egyptians no longer felt confident enough to hold on to the lands they had gained earlier. Egypt retreated into the safety of the Nile Valley, giving up on its Near Eastern possessions. But this was only the beginning. There was more to come. As the years went by, Egypt lost more and more of its territories. Libyans and Nubians started to cause trouble for the Egyptians. Soon, Egypt found itself completely isolated. To make matters worse, the once mighty Egyptian army was nowhere to be seen. Its fighting strength had diminished so much that it could hardly even defend the borders, let alone attack other nations. Now, Egypt was ready to enter a long and painful process of decline and retreat. Over time, Egypt fell into chaos and civil strife, splitting the country into separate regions. Internal conflict caused the effective end of the new kingdom in 1077 BCE. The country was now split into two regions. The north was ruled by a line of native Egyptian pharaohs, and the south was ruled by a Nubian king. Eventually, Egypt would fall into the hands of three great empires: the Persians, Greeks, and finally the Romans. In 525 BCE, the Persian king Cambyses invaded Egypt and made it part of the Persian Empire. Despite some resistance from the local rulers, the Persians managed to get control of Egypt. Life under the Persians was not easy for the Egyptians. They had to pay heavy taxes to the empire, which negatively impacted the Egyptian economy. However, the people's religion and culture were not suppressed, which made it easier for them to accept their new Persian rulers. But this rule would not last long. In 332 BCE, Alexander the Great, the famed king of Macedonia, conquered Egypt and freed it from Persian rule. After his victory, he founded the city of Alexandria and made it the capital of his empire. The city soon became a major cultural and scientific center in the ancient world. It was also a hub of thought and scholarship during the Hellenistic period. But unfortunately, Alexander did not live to see this great city reach its full potential. He was succeeded by his brother Ptolemy I, who established the Ptolemaic dynasty. Under the Ptolemies, Egypt experienced a cultural revolution. Many Greek customs and traditions were adopted, but at the same time, the Egyptians were able to keep their own cultural identity. During the reign of Cleopatra VII, who was the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic kingdom, Egypt became a battleground between Rome and the Roman client state of the Eastern Seleucid Empire. She first allied with Rome against her old ally, Syria, only to switch sides and ally with Syria against Rome later. Cleopatra's efforts to expand her kingdom beyond the Nile Delta failed, resulting in the loss of important territories. Eventually, following her defeat by Octavian, later known as Emperor Augustus in 30 BCE, Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire. As a Roman province, Egypt enjoyed relative stability and prosperity due to its agricultural resources and trade networks. It played a vital role in supplying food and goods to the growing Roman Empire. Natural resources like gold, incense, and perfumes were highly valued throughout the empire and brought great wealth to the region. But despite this, Egypt still faced challenges such as external threats from nomadic tribes and internal unrest and power struggles among the ruling elite. Throughout this time, however, the Egyptian people were able to preserve many of their traditions and customs despite the changing rulers and empires. In the end, despite the many challenges and threats from foreign powers, Egypt maintained its status as a land with a rich history and deep culture. Ancient Egyptian civilization left a unique legacy in pyramids, temples, and inscriptions that continue to attract visitors from around the world to this day. For thousands of years, ancient Egyptian civilization flourished along the banks of the Nile River, leaving behind a unique legacy in pyramids, temples, and hieroglyphic inscriptions that continue to attract visitors from around the world to this day. Following the decline of the Pharaohs and the Ptolemaic kingdom, Egypt came under the rule of various empires and dynasties, including the Roman and Arab empires. The Arab conquest in the 7th century CE brought Islam to Egypt, and Arabic became the dominant language. During the Middle Ages, Egypt was part of various Islamic caliphates and became an important center of trade and learning. In the 16th century, Egypt came under the control of the Ottoman Empire. During their rule, Egypt served as an important agricultural and commercial center, supplying grain and cotton to the empire. However, the decline of the Ottomans in the 19th century led to a period of instability and foreign intervention in Egypt. In 1798, Napoleon Bonaparte invaded Egypt as part of his larger campaign to conquer the Middle East. Although he was eventually defeated, the French occupation introduced new ideas and reforms to the country, including the metric system and the establishment of a public school system. In the early 20th century, Egypt became a British protectorate after the British occupation of 1882. The British controlled Egypt's foreign affairs and kept military bases in the country, while the Egyptian government under the monarchy of King Fuad I had some autonomy over internal matters. This period saw significant infrastructure development, including the construction of the Suez Canal, which greatly reduced travel time between Europe and Asia. However, the British occupation also led to tensions with the Egyptian people, who resented the perceived infringement on their sovereignty. After World War II, the Egyptian people's desire for independence grew stronger. In 1952, a group of army officers led by Muhammad Naguib and Gamal Abdel Nasser overthrew the monarchy and established a republic. Nasser became the new leader of Egypt and embarked on a program of nationalization, taking control of key industries such as banking and insurance. He also pursued a policy of non-alignment during the Cold War, seeking to maintain good relations with both the United States and the Soviet Union. Under Nasser's leadership, Egypt also played a significant role in the Arab-Israeli conflict. In 1956, Egypt nationalized the Suez Canal, which had been owned by a British and French company. This move was seen as a challenge to Western interests in the region and led to the Suez Crisis, in which British and French forces attempted to retake control of the canal. The crisis ended with the withdrawal of the Western powers and the return of the canal to Egyptian control. In 1967, the Six-Day War between Egypt and Israel resulted in a decisive Israeli victory and the occupation of Egyptian territory, including the Sinai Peninsula. Following these conflicts, Egypt continued to support the Palestinian cause and served as a base for various Palestinian militant groups. In 1973, after the Yom Kippur War between Egypt and Israel, President Anwar Sadat began a process of peacemaking with Israel. This culminated in the 1979 Camp David Accords, in which Egypt and Israel established diplomatic relations and agreed to peace. Sadat's efforts to make peace with Israel were seen as a major achievement, and he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1978. However, Sadat's peace policy was controversial in Egypt, and he faced opposition from various groups, including Islamic fundamentalists. On October 6, 1981, Sadat was assassinated by Islamic extremists while reviewing a military parade in Cairo. His death led to a period of mourning and a crackdown on Islamic fundamentalist groups. Mubarak's rule was marked by a series of political, economic and social reforms aimed at stabilizing the country and continuing Sadat's legacy. He pursued close ties with the United States and other Western countries, and Egypt became a major recipient of American aid. Over the next 3 decades, Egypt experienced significant economic growth and development under Mubarak's leadership. However, many Egyptians felt that the benefits of this growth were not evenly distributed and that corruption was widespread. Moreover, there was growing discontent over restrictions on civil liberties and political participation. In 2011, the so-called Arab Spring uprisings spread to Egypt. On January 25th, millions of Egyptians took to the streets of Cairo and other cities to protest against the government. The protests quickly escalated, and within days, President Mubarak resigned, ending his nearly 30-year rule. The resignation of President Mubarak was a significant moment in modern Egyptian history. It marked the end of a controversial era of one-party rule and the beginning of a new chapter in the country's history. The future of Egypt remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: the country will never forget the lessons of the past. From the ancient pharaohs to the modern day, Egypt has been a land of great civilizations, each leaving their own unique mark on the country's history. The legacy of these ancient cultures can still be seen in the ruins of their great monuments and the artifacts they left behind, but it is also alive in the hearts and minds of the Egyptian people. Despite the challenges and changes they have faced over the centuries, the Egyptians have managed to preserve their cultural heritage and pass it down to future generations. But the country has a rich history of resilience and innovation. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the incredible history of Egypt. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story from MindPop. Here's a fun fact. The Great Pyramid of Giza was built around 4,500 years ago, and it took over 2 million workers more than 20 years to complete. We hope you learned something new and maybe even got a little bit obsessed with ancient Egypt like we are. If you have any thoughts or questions, drop them in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're craving more Egyptian adventures, we've got you covered. See you in the next episode.